Welcome back to the CSC Garage. I'm excited today because we're going to be installing some performance upgrades on the ultimate TT250 Enduro riding machine. We're going to continue this build by adding a 47-tooth sprocket and an upgraded heavy-duty chain. This is not only going to provide some reliability, some further strength that we need, but also it's going to operate more smoothly. It's a more efficient turn of the chain, and this improvement will greatly affect the performance of this motorcycle. In order to perform this performance upgrade, we're going to need to remove the rear caliper and the rear wheel. And it only takes a few tools. We've got a 19mm socket, we've got a 12mm socket, and a 13mm wrench. Let's get started. To remove the rear caliper, we're going to use a 12mm socket and take out these two mounting bolts from the bracket. We can then just hang the brake to the side. Now, to remove the rear wheel, we're also going to remove first the locking nut off the adjuster, and then I'm going to loosen the adjuster all the way to the end so that I can move the wheel back and forth as needed and remove the chain. I'm going to do that on both sides. Now we're going to take the 19mm socket to remove the axle nut. And I'm going to actually put an 18mm on the other side of the axle to hold it. Take off the adjusting plate. Slide the axle out. Move the wheel forward. And hold on to the brake plate. To change out the sprocket, we needed just a few tools: 13mm socket, flathead screwdriver, snap ring pliers, and we're going to apply some red Loctite when we reinstall the new sprocket on there. First, we want to break the bolts loose, the 13mm socket. Now the snap ring. Now, as you tighten up the sprocket mounting bolts, you want to achieve somewhere between 30 and 35 foot-pounds of torque. You can verify that. You can use a torque wrench or go by feel. But more importantly, you also want to make sure you use red Loctite on those threads. That's really going to hold this thing in place. While we have the rear wheel off, we have the perfect opportunity to install a knobby tire. We want a little more aggressive tread for the off-road riding we intend to do. Why don't we go ahead and do it right now? We're going to put the brake mounting bracket on the right side, kind of hold it in place. Also put the spacer on the left side. Work our wheel in. Go ahead and lay that chain back over the new sprocket. And we're going to reinstall the axle nut, but kind of leave everything loose, just snugged up, because we're going to feed that new chain onto this. Now that we have the aftermarket sprocket installed, the rear wheel is mounted back in the swing arm, we've left everything kind of finger tight, just a little tension on it so that we can make the change of our chain. We're going to be installing the top of the line gold chain, and to do so I'm going to be using a flathead screwdriver, small hammer, chain braking tool, 14mm wrench to help me work that tool, 13mm wrench to make an adjustment on our chain once we get it installed, and the 19 and 18mm to button it all down by tightening up that axle nut. So the first thing we're going to do is find the master link on the stock chain. It's right here. I'm going to use the flathead to So we've got the pin, top of the link, and then we can remove the master link. We're going to keep the chain on top to help us feed in the new chain. We'll temporarily put the old master link back in to hold these two chains together. Okay, now what we want to do is set the length of our chain. I'm going to kind of put the axle somewhere in between the marks of adjustment on the rear on both sides. And because we're going with a smaller sprocket, the chain actually comes out a little long. So I'm going to go ahead and remove 1.5 links from this chain using my chain braking tool. Take my 14mm wrench, clamp that down, and what this tool is going to do is push the pin right through the link. And you can see it just pushed the pin straight out. Back off. And remove as many links as you need to. You can see how this works. It clamps down on it, and then the smaller rod pushes the pin out. And now insert the new master link. And as you can see, there's not enough room now for the clip to go on. So what I like to use is just a spare nut that I have here, a little 10mm, 6mm ID nut. Just to hold a hollow spot so that I can then squeeze this master link together. Now we can insert the clip. We're going to put the round side of the clip facing the direction of the drive, just like this. And we're on. Now we can adjust the tension on the chain. So I'm going to look at the lines on each side of the swing arm to where the center of the axle is. I'm 1, 2, 3, almost at the 4th line. We'll go around to the other side and see where it is in relation. We want to keep that wheel square within the swing arm. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have things relatively square and just snugged up in the back to hold things in place. I'm going to lower the jack now so that the motorcycle is sitting on its own weight. That's going to put the chain at a tighter position. So we still got a little bit too much play in this. I'm going to take out just a little bit of that slack and we'll have things ready. Now I can button down my axle. And we're going to go ahead and torque this up to approximately 40 foot-pounds. Okay, we have our wheel adjusted. Now we're ready to mount the brake caliper. We're going to slide it back over the disc. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on these threads. Put these at somewhere around 15 to 20 foot-pounds with the Loctite on there. Those are buttoned up. We can then verify the function of the brake and pump some pressure back into it as well. I'm going to lift that jack stand back up so that the wheel will spin freely. So we're gonna spin it. At first, there's still no pressure. So the first pump was just to prime that pressure back in the system. You can now test it. Locks, our mounting bracket is back in the correct position on the peg. One last thing we want to do is put this locking nut on our axle adjusters. This is 13 millimeter, and we'll lock the two down on each other. Now we're ready to rock and roll. Thanks for joining us here once again at the CSC Garage. I had a good time showing you step by step how to remove your rear wheel to install the aftermarket sprocket, upgraded chain, and luckily today we even had time to slap on that knobby tire. We're going to continue upgrading the ultimate TT250 Enduro riding machine, and until then, enjoy the ride.